proof. Now, the first one, the first tenet. Before you go to the tenet, let's see the origin of these tenets, okay? So, say these tenets are included in the so-called Makerere report. Makerere report, 1961. So, the Makerere report, which was given back in 1961, was a report whose policy was English only. Whose policy was English only. The Makerere report was given back in 1961, like I say, and the purpose of this report was English only. English only. So this report had the so-called English only policy. English only policy. English only policy. Now, under this report, the Makerere report, we're going to see a number of tenets. A number of what? Tenets. And these tenets are favoring English, are favoring the continuation of what? Of English in former British colonies. Now, the first tenet favoring English is that English is better taught monolingually. English is better taught monolingually. That's the first tenet favoring English. English should be taught monolingually. It's better taught monolingually. So those who favor this tenet, those who support this tenet, believe that in order for English to flourish, it should be taught monolingually. You get the concept? English should be taught monolingually. Last time I said there were different campaigns which favored the monolingual aspect of English teaching. That is, those who favored English thought that by allowing other languages to be taught hand in hand with English, English was going to be contaminated. English was going to be contaminated. So they wanted to keep English pure by eliminating other languages. That's why last time I said when English was imposed in third world countries, in former colonies, those who imposed the English, the British, wanted English to be taught monolingually because other languages were termed vernaculars. So they didn't want other languages to be taught along with English because they wanted English to flourish. They didn't want English to be contaminated by other languages. You get the concept? So they said, okay, in order for English to be taught well, it should be taught monolingual. This means other languages should be excluded from the educational circles. Education circles. Get the concept? That's the first tenet, the first belief. The second belief is that the ideal of English teachers as a native speaker. You get the concept? The ideal of English teachers as a native speaker. Let me explain this tenet. This tenet means that English should be taught by native speakers. Because according to this tenet, native speakers are in a better position to teach English because, after all, English is their mother tongue. English is their mother tongue. So English should be taught by native speakers and not non-native speakers. But as we're going to see later, this is also a fallacy because last time I asked you a question, can't you teach English? You are not native speakers, but can't you teach English? And you said you can teach English, okay? Because what matters here is not the idea of being a native speaker. What matters here is the competence, okay? The language competence. If you have acquired the language competence in a given language, if you are linguistically competent, then you can teach a language, okay? So teaching a language does not mean that you are a native speaker. You can teach a language which is not your mother tongue, okay? provided that you have all the necessary linguistic abilities concerning this language, okay? So English can be taught by non-native speakers, provided that they have been taught on how to teach English, Because there's no way you can say English should always be taught by native speakers, and that non-native speakers are not in a position to teach English. That's a fallacy. That's a tenet. The earlier the English is taught, the better the results. That's another tenet. The earlier the English is taught, the better the results. As you're going to see later, this is also a fallacy. So this fallacy means that in order for you to master English, you need to be taught English right from your childhood. Right from your childhood. So they think that by learning English later in your life, you can't master English properly. So in order for you to master English properly, you need to be taught English right from your childhood. Right from your childhood. Your concept. So let's say the earlier the English is taught, the better the results. Your concept. But you need to know that sometimes a person can learn a language later in his life, okay? Because there are proofs that adults have learned English later in their life and they have mastered English properly, okay? So this concept means that when you are an adult, learning a new language becomes a problem. But it's not a problem because there are proofs which show that adults also can learn English even at a later stage, okay? So this is also a fallacy. We're going to see later. And this fallacy now led to the early dominance of English when it was imposed in the former British colonies. So when English was imposed as a medium of instruction, other languages were excluded in schools because children were supposed to learn only what? English at an early stage. So other languages were excluded. So they thought that these children should not be contaminated. These children should not be taught other languages apart from English. Only English should dominate. So their mother tongues, their national languages should be excluded right from the early beginning. Right from the early beginning. Right from the beginning, yeah. That's a fallacy. We're going to see later. Another fallacy, another tenet is that the more the English is taught, the better the results. The more the English is taught, the better the results. The more the English is taught, the better the results. Maybe this tenet is based on the argument that in order for a language to be well taught, learners should have sufficient input. Sufficient what? Input in the language. Do you know what I mean by sufficient input? Sufficient input? When you talk about the input when it comes to language, it means that learners should be exposed to the language. So